Hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. I think we've got a very cool person who's going to be sharing with us today. Boyd Summerhays. I don't know much about Boyd. I haven't learnt much from Boyd, and I'm looking. There he is. Looking forward to it. Hey, Boyd.
What's up?
How you
How
doing?
are you, Andrew? I'm doing good. How's that lighting? Am I okay? You look good right there.
Yeah, you look good. You look good to
Okay.
me.
All right, good deal. I wish I had a longer arm. It could zoom me out a little bit more, but nope.
Hey, in these tough times, we get tough views. I know I've
I
been
hear
too
you.
close to the camera a little bit too much this week, it seems.
Yeah. Well, I love what you're doing with the lockdown learning. Appreciate it. And
Oh, thanks, man. I appreciate that, and I appreciate you coming on, Boyd. What are you guys up to? Where are you at the moment, and what's the family getting up to?
yeah, so we're in Scottsdale, Arizona this time of year. My kids all do online school. So not much change for us, except, I mean, obviously we've been doing the social distancing thing and taking it really serious too. So we've been doing a lot of things around the house, practicing in the backyard, a little putting green and indoor, practice area at the house. But even more than that, we just tried to rest. I mean, I feel like, I've been teaching nonstop for 9 years almost, and my kids have been grinding pretty hard. So we're just trying to just rest and recoup a little bit, because when the season does start back up, it's going to be hectic. So we're just enjoying a little
Mm,
family time and just doing what we can
that's
around the
great.
house.
I love it. I love to hear that. I love to hear that. So, Boyd, I've got to be honest. I certainly look up to you as a coach. I look up to the players that you
Yeah,
share with, but I don't know much about you. I don't know much about your coaching philosophy, and
yeah,
that's really the purpose of us getting together.
yeah,
I would
for
love to
sure.
steal some of your stuff and just hear a little bit about what you've got to say. But I was thinking this morning before we got started, uh, the Summerhays family, I suppose you've got the Summerhays family, you've got the Harmon family, as far as just great golf lineage, great golf genetics. Could you just share some of your genetics with me, perhaps,
Yeah,
instead
for
of
sure.
coaching stuff?
Yeah, golf is definitely in my blood. I mean, my dad is a golf nut. He's 72, 73 years old, and he still plays. He plays 4 days a week right now, 36 holes walking, plays with these grandkids. He loves it.
Wow.
My uncle, so my father's dad, he was the head golf coach at the University of Utah. He was the head baseball coach as well. But they lived right off the Salt Lake Country Club, and they'd sneak under the fence there. And the head pro was cool about my dad and my uncle Bruce and their other brother Gary, playing at
Yeah.
the nicest country club in town, sneaking under the fence and kind of looking the other way a little bit. So that's how they kind of got started in the game. And then from my grandpa teaching them, obviously. But and then a lot of people know about my uncle Bruce Summerhays, was a great
Yeah.
club pro and teacher. He was a teacher for sure, and he had a reputation as being a great player and teacher. But then when he got to be 48, 49, he and my dad, built up a plan for him to hopefully make the Champions Tour, and ended up working good. And he played 13 years um, and won 3 times. And then, my dad just loved the game. My uncle didn't teach me and Daniel, but my dad did growing up. And he just was obsessed with the game. He played college golf and at the University of Utah, but he was playing all the time. So I think, coming from a family of 7 siblings, my dad just wanted to teach us all so we could all hang out at the golf course. And a lot of what you see me doing today with my kids, if people are watching some of the Instagram stuff I put up, I mean, that was me as a kid with my siblings running around the golf course, being crazy and playing matches and having fun. So definitely my love of the game came from my dad, just playing before school, early in the mornings, after school till dark, always having a match with us, playing for a Maverick cone on the way home. And my dad's got a huge heart. So even when we weren't going to win the bet or the goal we had as a team or individually, he'd always remake the goal so we could have some putt to make, get the Maverick ice cream cone or sandwich, whatever. But,
Yeah.
and then obviously Daniel had a great, run on the tour, won on the Corn Ferry
Yeah.
Tour as an amateur, and then played 8 years on the PGA Tour. And then I made the PGA Tour in my early 20s. Didn't stay out there very long, but played pro golf for 12 years. And then when I was done playing, I wasn't happy with the way my career went playing wise. I thought I could do a lot better and
Yeah.
had, high expectations for myself, but I still loved the game. It was a bitter pill to swallow leaving it as a player, but once I started teaching the game, you know, it got to be a different buzz. You know, helping someone else get better truly became a rush. And then when I saw my kids get involved in it, then it truly became something you know, I feel really blessed to be a coach and have my kids love the game. So that's kind of where we come to. And then my Uncle Bruce had a daughter that played on the LPGA Tour. So at one point, I was playing on the PGA Tour. My uncle was on the Champions Tour. His daughter was on the LPGA Tour. And Daniel, he's 4 years younger than me, was playing on the Korn Ferry Tour. So we had all 4 tours covered at one time, which is pretty cool.
Wow. That is amazing. That is amazing. And man, your kids, they've got some kind of game. I got to tell you, I love, you know, getting updates on Facebook and Insta and all of that. Preston and Grace, and I know you've got a younger guy who's really starting to take to the game. I saw his swing a couple of weeks ago, and it looks great. Yeah,
I mean, Preston, I was still playing when he was, you know, growing up. He was traveling on the road with me and my wife, Barbara Jean, and he was just around the game all the time. I think I was overly sensitive at the beginning of him only being a golfer, so I tried to push him in all the other directions, all the other sports, just to see if he ended up liking something more than golf. You know, I didn't want him to get to be a teenager in those years where you're pretty independent and think, dang, my dad, all he did was put golf in front of me. And but it didn't matter. Whatever I put in front of him, whether it was karate, baseball, basketball, soccer, he always just wanted to do golf. And the last year I played was on PGA Tour Canada. We went up as a family for 8 weeks in a row. And Preston, besides his sister's birthday in the middle of the summer, my wife made him stay at the hotel and celebrate, you know, Grace's birthday with the family. He was with me every second of those 8 weeks, you know, whether I had a 7 o'clock tee time and need to leave the hotel at 5 to get there to warm up at 5:30. And he was with me every second of that summer, and he was 9. And he said, Dad, when do I get to play in my own tournaments? Because he never played a tournament until he's 9. He'd been around the game a lot. He'd come tag along with me every day I went to the course, but I just didn't want him to start too early. And after seeing that, he was with me nonstop, loved being around the players, loves being inside the ropes, walking the fairways. He just couldn't get enough of it. I knew I couldn't push him. You know, it was his choice and his love. So the rest is history with Preston. I mean, he's obsessed with the game. And then my daughter Grace was a swimmer, so I'd balance that between helping Preston after school and then going to Grace's, you know, swim practices. And right around 11 or 12, I think she just saw how much time me and Preston were spending on the course. And Grace is a very competitive person, and I think she just wanted some of the action. I think she just really wanted to be in the mix with me and Preston. And because of her swimming background, she had a great base as far as her legs were really strong, and she had some great athletic motion. So her starting in another sport actually ended up being a benefit to her, because she drives it really straight and she hits it relatively long. She's almost at the LPGA average as a 14-year-old and now 15-year-old. So, you know, her being in swimming helped her, and she learned how to take lessons too. Like the coach she had for swimming, you know, was very organized, very detailed. She learned to listen, and when she came into golf, she kind of knew how to get better, it seemed like, you know. But she's super competitive. Like, that's the best thing she has going for her, is she's always been with players that are better than her, whether it was Preston or my other high school, college, mini tour, and other tour students. She's been around it all. And so she's always just played golf, not as a girl, but just as a person. And I think that's helped her the most. She knows that she's supposed to launch her wedges really low, high spin. She knows all those things. I never have said, hey, that's really good for a girl. I mean, I have never even insinuated that. She just wants to be the best golfer she can be. So when she's playing with her brother all the time, Preston, she just has no choice but, I think, to get better, you know. And then little Cam, he's our spitfire, you know, our youngest. He's coming up the ranks, and he's our confident one, cocky one, trash talker. But he'll be good too, I think. You know, just being around the game. Usually the youngest has the most opportunities, so we'll see.
Yeah, this is true. And another note from swimming: you got to work your tail off at swimming. Swimming is just putting in the laps, and she obviously learned how to work there. Yeah,
for sure. Yeah, I didn't really care if it was golf or one thing or the other. I definitely, when I got done playing, teaching sun up to sundown was pretty natural to me, because in my pursuit as being a player, I worked hard. I saw that from my dad growing up. My dad was constantly working. And so that's the only thing I wanted with my kids is, hey, whatever you choose, I just want you to develop a work ethic, because usually if you have some good people skills and a work ethic, you can learn a skill. You can be successful. So you know, I didn't care that she was a swimmer. I, of course, wanted her to be a golfer deep down. And so when she made the switch, I was pumped because that was just more time I got to spend with her on the course. So.
Yeah, that's neat. That's neat. I must say, when I think of Preston, I know he won the U.S. Junior, but there's a memory that I have where he's on the range, and I think it's like his caddy or someone's filming it, and he's like, watch this, I'm going to hit this pole.
Oh, yeah.
And he hits the pole, and the ball comes back, and he takes his hat off and catches the ball in his hat. I'm like, that is the coolest thing I've ever seen any golfer do.
Yeah, it was like a fluke. It was almost too like crazy to almost believe. A lot of people thought it wasn't real, you know. So he shot. It was the U.S. Amateur qualifying. He was 15, and up at Soldier Hollow, where they used to play where they played the U.S. Pub Links back in the day when they had that. And he shot 65 in the first round, 7 under, and was leading. And that's how calm he is. He's hitting, and I've let my kids be kids, you know. It's like I've seen it on tour where the best players in the world, they lock in when it needs to be locked in, but they're really calm and relaxed until that point. So that's in between his 65, and he's hitting those trick shots, and he's trying to hit the box. He can't hit it, and I'm talking trash to him. And of course he hits it, but he didn't know the ball's going to go in the air, but he had the instincts to kind of just reach out his hat and grab it. So he ended up going on to, he said, hey, that's the coolest thing I've ever done. And a few hours later, he went on to shoot 60 as a 15-year-old and set the USGA record. So he shot 19 under in the US Am qualifying, and that was in between those 2 rounds. So that was a freak day for him for sure, but that was a cool trick shot. We tried it again. He won his second state am this summer at the same course, Soldier Hollow, and he tried to hit it. He couldn't even hit it. And so he tried to hit it every day. He warmed up in the matches and just couldn't do it. So let alone hit it and have it come back to him. He couldn't even hit it this year. So.
Amazing, amazing, amazing. And so, Boyd, I've got to tell you, you know, one of the players on the PGA Tour that I root for the most is, I know you're a Ping ambassador now, is a guy who's also a Ping guy, is Tony Finau. I love the guy. I've never met him, never spoken to him, but I love what he stands for. I love the way he interacts with people, and I love the way he plays the game. And you work with Tony. How long have you been working with Tony, and how do you guys go about your business? How do you help him improve, if I may ask?
Yeah, so we met on the Korn Ferry. We started working together on the Korn Ferry Tour. You know, Utah is a small-knit community. I'm 10 years older than him. We actually had played the Utah Open together and another mini tour state open together. But I remember I played in the Korn Ferry Tour event when he was 17 at the Utah Championship, where he's hitting these 400-yard drives. I didn't know him as like a friend, but I knew of him, of course. You know, Utah, we look after our own. So I knew of this Finau kid that hit it a mile and had all this potential. And, you know, 6 years later of being a pro, he turned pro at 17. He got his card, and, you know, I've always tried to support other Utahns. And I remember texting him after he got his Korn Ferry card and said, hey, we're really proud of you. You know, Utah, you could be our next Utah, you know, successful tour pro, just pulling for you, basically. And, you know, he responded with thanks or whatever. But like 4 months later, he reached out to me after, you know, starting the Korn Ferry season, having some success, but realizing he still needed to get better. And he texted me and said, hey, I'd like to get together. And I knew he'd taken some lessons from some high profile players or teachers back when he was like 18 or 19. But here he is, 23, reaching out to me. And I wasn't sure if he wanted to get together just to talk about, you know, the tour, suggestions, just advice. And he showed up at the golf course, and he got out of his car in basketball shorts and a T-shirt and high tops. And I'm like, okay, maybe he just wants to talk. And then I saw him pull his bag out, and I'm like, okay, let's go. So the rest is a little bit history there. So, you know, he when we first met, he's always been super, super long. I mean, he's far shorter now than he used to be. I mean, he was so long as a kid, but obviously he wasn't as accurate. So he had to kind of bite the bullet there. And before he ever met with me as a coach, he was already starting that process of just trying to get a tour game, just keep it in play, like course management. He was just doing his best to go to one shot. And at the time, he used to hit a high hook with his driver, just went forever. But then he tried to go to a cut. But when I saw him, he was spinning it too much and curving it too much. He knew where it was going to go, but he couldn't start the ball like you get on the tougher courses where they got trees off the left side of the box or a left to right wind, and he just couldn't do that. So he was very specific in what he wanted. He wanted to get the curve out and the overspin out. He knew he was steep and curving it way too much. And, you know, he's made the cool thing about Tony is each year we just try to get a little bit better. It's hard to do. You know, it's a little easier to
When
get
you're
better
that
at the
good.
start, you know, because you have more to improve or to gain. But each year he's gotten a little bit better, and you add that up over 7 years, and he truly has become one of the best players in the world. He drives it. You know, when I met him, he was known for his length, and he still is, but he doesn't even
Yeah.
consider himself a power player. I mean, he used to hit it, you know, 30 yards further. And even this summer when we did that little fun thing, chasing 200 ball speed, you know, he got to 200 ball speed, and yet he doesn't do that when he plays because he knows he can't hit it as straight as he needs to. So he's very disciplined. He looks at
Yeah.
himself as a precision player, and just each year he's just gotten a little bit better. And now instead of the driver being a club his rookie year, especially on the Corn Ferry, but even the first year or two on the PJ Tour, we kind of had to play around his driver a little bit. You know, use it on holes where he wouldn't get penalized, but now he hits it so straight, so good. He hits driver almost any time he can. So it's become his favorite club in the bag, which is cool.
That's cool. And Boyd, what kind of club speed does Tony swing at when he's playing typically?
When he's playing at the start of the year, when it's a little cooler, he's going at 122-ish. Midsummer, 124, 125. And he does have another gear for sure, but he just disciplines himself just to hit it straight. Until golf course design really widens out the fairways at the distance that would be advantageous to be another 20, 30 yards longer, it really doesn't make much sense. You know, it just keeps getting tighter and tighter for an extra 20 yards. And so he hits it plenty far and plenty accurate to be able to be as consistent as he is. But if the course design changed where they widened out the fairways in the areas where a 190 ball speed, 195 ball speed would help, then we would do it. But the courses haven't done that yet. So, and I don't think they will. So
I don't think they will. Yeah.
no.
Yeah. And Boyd, talk a little bit about, if you would, about the length of Tony's backswing. Didn't it used to be quite a bit longer, and has it gotten shorter, or is that something you guys consciously did?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that, because at you being a great coach, you've been coaching a lot longer than me, but to hit it shorter has never been a request I've ever gotten. Never. So when I see that he has a short swing and people are like, they'll Instagram message me and say, hey, I'd love to have a more compact swing, shorter swing. I'm like, I don't teach that. It's just, this is the one player in the whole world I've ever taught that we could lose distance and be okay. Cause I don't teach a short swing. I don't like, or if someone has a short swing, like a John Rahm, a Gary Woodland, even Preston has, he's short of parallel and still hits it hard. That's great. But intentionally, I do not like what you would call a compact swing or a tight swing, a short back swing. It just, what happened is each year he started realizing that the straighter he hit it, the more often he would hit his driver. And so theoretically we'd be longer, the more we could use a driver. So he didn't intentionally shorten his swing. He intentionally tried to learn a fairway finder swing, go-to shot. And it just shortened on its own, basically. So he did have a long backswing. So it was more of, he was aware of a little bit of just, if he could give up 10 yards but gain 6 to 8% in fairways, then theoretically he was going to be just as long as before, or even longer, but be able to use his driver nonstop. In Vegas, his rookie year, we hit 2 drivers. This year he hit 9 drivers. It was just, the more, the better he's gotten with his driver. Even though he hits it a little shorter, he hits it almost everywhere now. I mean, it takes a lot to get the driver out of his hands.
Oh, that's great.
That's kind of how it happened for him, is he was just realizing he wasn't hitting enough fairways, tried to develop a go-to shot. A lot like Bubba. Bubba has 3 drives. He hits a big slice that he knows is going to hit the fairway, a little smaller slice, and then he hits like a high bomb that barely curves. And so on his shorter, softer swing, I'm sure it's not quite as long, but that's kind of what Tony, evolved into, as a short swing, just based on, he went literally from the high 20s to, 130 club head speed to 125 to 122. So it's just kind of naturally did it.
He's looking to play better.
Yeah. Well, and the thing too is, and this, it's like, even though he has a short swing, he has massively long arms, right? And he has leverage. He's tall, but he moves fast. If you look at his waggle, he couldn't hit it
Yeah.
far if he did what Hideki did. You know, he can't go back, and that's something that people need to understand is you can hit it really far from a short backswing if you're moving the club head really fast. And you can tell right from the beginning of his backswing, he's moving that thing fast. So, you know,
Yeah.
his tempo being as fast as it is allows him to still hit it far from a short backswing.
Yeah, yeah, and I often like to talk to the golfers that I teach, who are typically older and
Yeah.
typically shorter, and they go, you know, I'm trying to be like Tony Finau. I'm like,
No.
no, you
No.
don't swing it at 120 in the
Yeah.
120s. If you do, then we can do that. We need you to get that thing going.
Yep. For
Um,
sure.
and so him and John Rahm are two golfers I love to talk about because they are in that category outliers.
Yeah.
Let's not get people trying to do that. And that's exactly
No.
what you just said.
No, and yep, no restriction in hip turn, shoulder turn. Like, no, you want distance, you want freedom of motion, and it just, and that is a weird thing for me, is because you look at all the other teachers or the people I've taught and all my students over the years, I have never, maybe I've shortened their swing by taking the looseness out in like their hands at the
Yeah.
top. Maybe they regrip it and it gets a little long, but we're talking for every 50 people that I see, I mean, I'm never shortening something up intentionally. It's just, that's not going to lead to more power, more distance, and we all know how important that is. So yeah, Tony does
Yeah.
sometimes, because of his short swing, people do think that that's what I teach, but that's just him and his unique case that he can swing short and still hit it a mile.
Yeah, that is cool. That's a good point to note. Boyd, what role do statistics play in the
Yeah.
work you guys do together?
Yeah, I mean, even with my kids, you know, like I got some printouts here. Like, I like my kids knowing exactly. Like here, it just, I use a guy, Richie Hunt. He just kind of marks down like
Yeah.
the best guys from a certain distance, average guys, you know, best average, and then 5 tiers of, you know, ball striking. And even at a young age, my kids all know the percentages as far as proximity to the hole. I'll ask them in the testing when I get together in camps. They know strokes gained based on whether they hit the fairway, rough, sand, recovery shots. It's never too young to understand like the stats. It's a huge thing for me. So if my son understands at age 10 or 11 that he's only supposed to make 50% of 8-footers, and he's only supposed to make, you know, X amount from 20 feet, he's not getting mad. I think people get upset because of unmet expectations, but you better have expectations that are reasonable. If your expectations are even higher than the PGA Tour players and you're a junior golfer, a high school player, a college player that's maybe not even playing D1, you're setting yourself up for a lot of frustration. So at a young age, my kids all have these printouts and know if you ask, hey, what's the average from 150 yards from the fairway? They would tell you 27 feet. You know, they would know 100 yards. You know, they would know that that is 18 feet. It's not as close as you think. So even to the launch angles, right? My daughter was in a bunker at the state championship. She was on a level lie, and the lip of the bunker was literally, you know, 6 feet in the air, and it was only like 8 feet in front of her. Where if you drew a straight line, her lie was dead level. It wasn't like an upslope to where she could still get it over. She tried to hit a hybrid over it, and when we got done with the round, I said, hey, babe, if you drew a line from that lip, from that level line in the bunker, what angle was that? She's like, I don't know, maybe 30. And I'm like, okay, so what do you flight your 60-degree wedge from 80 yards? She's like, mid-20s. I'm like, exactly. And it made sense to her, right? Instead of saying, hey, what are you doing hitting that shot? I'm like, physically, you had no chance of getting that over the lip. So, and with Tony, yeah, he is very aware of the stats. You know, in a way, like we don't look at it week to week. I think if you have a good caddy, if the player's observant, if the coach, I watch my players play a ton. I'm not on the range a lot with them only. I watch them play. I think between 3 or 4 people that are in tune to their game, if you shouldn't be missing huge pieces of what to work on. But like, I like to get a printout after you have a big enough sample size of the stats, right? And so they can see, you know, direct you a little bit closer to what you need to do. But yeah, I've always had that with Tony a little bit. And I think that helps, you know, just even like knowing from 32, 33 feet, that's where on tour, if you 2-putt, you're not gaining strokes, you're not losing strokes. And when you 2-putt from 60 feet, you're gaining 0.2 two, almost a quarter of a shot when you two putt from 60 feet. And that makes sense to kids. I wasn't great at school. Like I think I was smart, but I loved English for some reason, loved writing papers, and I loved math. Math made sense to me. I just loved it. Did college math as a junior in high school. And so numbers to me with stats and strokes gained and proximity to the hole, that all makes sense to me. And so maybe I influenced a little bit in that in the teaching, but not every player likes to know too much either. But it has helped my kids know what you're supposed to make, what is possible, and kind of set some healthy expectations and even some high expectations too. So yeah, definitely use stats and analytics for sure.
Wow, that is so enlightening for me to hear that, because I know certainly growing up, and I'm sure when you were growing up, you didn't have access to that information. No. But the thing I kept thinking is, you've got these kids that are playing this high-level golf, and it's not just genetics. No one's really born this amazing golfer. You've got to have all the pieces of the puzzle in line, and you've got to, just like a quarterback in football needs to know the plays. As a player, there's stuff that we need to know. If you want to be a highly competitive golfer, you've got to know what the average make percentage is from 8 feet. You've got to know from 150 yards how far you're going to hit it from the hole. That kind of stuff. And I loved what you said, unreal expectations, when they're unmet, lead to frustration. And if we can avoid frustration by just knowing a few numbers and having a better picture as to how it should all fit, how it does all fit together, then we're more likely to not get mad and frustrated and beat ourselves up.
Yeah, and then it goes into a lot of the course management, right? So they can kind of know from, if they're playing a course that has really light rough on tour, when you hit it in the rough from certain distances, it can cost you anywhere from 0.2 to all the way 0.5. But on really light rough, my kids would instinctively know, hey, not that big of a penalty, right? So based on how much further they would have hit it if they would have laid up or hit a driver. So, and then my kids definitely, I have, you have the saying drive for show, putt for dough, but I've always, said drive for dough, putt for more dough. And so my kids practice a lot of driving. Tony has become an awesome driver of the ball. You look at the guys on tour that had tons of success. The driver is a huge weapon. And then, of course, you still have to make the putts. We know that. That's obvious. Preston and Grace and Tony, when he's putting good, the game just is easy. But for amateur golfers, man, and pro golfers, you get them to have T-balls be a strength, and the game just gets a whole lot easier. It's hard. Like I say, if I hit the fairway, if I hit it at a reasonable distance, above average or average, and I hit it in the fairway, I've got 3 chances to make par on a par 4. I can hit a bad approach shot, still hit a good chip. I can hit a bad approach shot, a bad chip, and a good putt, still save it. I still got 3 chances from the fairway, right? And so, or just even in play, right? So, yeah, my kids definitely know the analytics of it, and that's where it's going. And even when I worked with, I always loved Tiger Woods. I'm 4 years younger than him, and I always tried to go to his coaches or his trainers or sports psychologists. And back in the day, 20 years ago, when I as a 20-year-old, went to Jay Brunza, he had a simple sheet of putts inside 10 feet. And when I saw it, I'm like, okay, this guy's one of the best coaches in the world. He's been around Tiger. He says that 50% from 8 feet, that's what a tour player is. So then even as a 20-year-old, I was like, dang, I'm not going to be pissed when I miss, from 8 feet. Yeah. I'm just not. It is what it is. You look at in the NBA, a guy to be a great 3-point shooter is making 40% or high 30s. Well, we practice tons of putts inside that range where we can make 25% of putts, 30% of putts, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 putts, and then just be a good lag putter. And that goes to like stats too. Like one of the hidden skills, I think tour players are unbelievable lag putters. You think about tour greens. Yeah, I think smooth greens and fast greens, it doesn't make their short putts more difficult because they're used to that speed, right? But when you talk about a lag putt, that on a championship course, if you hit a shot to 30 to 40 to 50 feet, you're talking it usually has an up and over, a lot of bend. The best player, you have Luke Donald going 480 something holes without three putt. Freddie Jacobson, 528, holes without three putt. I spend tons of time with my kids and players on learning how to two putt, and then tons of putts from 12 feet and in where they can make the putts, so, and they just know that from the
Yeah.
stats.
Yeah. It really, for most people, isn't going to move the needle a tremendous amount if you practice your putting from 12 feet to 25 feet.
No, I mean,
simply because we're not going to make many.
Yeah, I mean, that would be like at a really young age, right? Like, say, okay, a kid that's 10 or 11 or 12 that's not a really good putter. Yeah, that 25-footer for that junior golfer may be a lag putt, but once he's proficient at that, you go to a tour event and you see him grinding on short putts, and then on the course when they're playing the practice rounds, they're putting lag putts from, if they don't hit a good approach shot, what's the putt they're going to have to that specific pin location, hole location. So, and I think, yeah, I just think that a lot of kids, they don't understand. Like, my kids would understand, like, hey, the best on tour, proximity to the hole, sometimes 32 to 33 feet. Average is 36 to 37 feet. Well, that's the average birdie putt distance or shot they have for birdie next. I mean, you got to be pretty good about getting down in two from 30, 40, 50, 60 feet, because you're going to get a lot of those.
Yeah, for sure. Boyd, let's move to another segment, really.
Yeah.
You've got these great kids you're working with. You've got a couple of really world-class players, and they're all world-class in their own category. What do you have them practice as it pertains to what I would call distance wedges? 20 yards to 110 yards. How do you guys go about developing that skill necessary, not so much technical, but just the skill, the feel, that sense to be able to go, okay, 85 yards, here we go?
Yeah, I think, once again, I think some things in coaching that have helped me help my players is just from doing it the wrong way. I think when I would work on my wedges, I'd say, okay, I'm going to have a 70-yard shot and an 85-yard shot and a 100-yard shot. I already had predetermined the distance it was going to be, instead of kind of memorizing a little bit of, so my kids, the students I have, will have a chart with their wedges where they write down the wedge, degree they have. My kids call it half, three-quarter, stock, and max. Brooks Koepka put something on Instagram several months ago where he called it small, medium, full, and max. Like, he had different wording for what those distances were, but basically, my kids, I'll show them wedge play of, like, Justin Rose, who's a high-speed player when he hits a driver, but then he kicks down that speed way off, right? So I don't use the word full, because full to me means, like, if the gas tank is full, it's 100%. So I have stock on there. So say Preston's stock 60 degree is 90 yards, and he has a three-quarter and then a half. Half to him is left arm parallel. Obviously, a clock system doesn't work if you can't control the distance or the speed at which you move the club head, but it's a good start. So basically, I have my kids pro Vs, make sure the grass is cut at the length that you need it, right? They all understand the longer the grass is, it's not going to have as much spin, won't launch as, low. It's got to be the right conditions, but clean grooves, pro Vs, clean pro Vs, and learning to control the speed. Like, if you think of, like, some people can't control the loft. Like, it just gets in depth, right? Like, someone that doesn't have a problem adding loft, like to get a 60-degree wedge to launch in the mid-20s, you can't be adding any loft, obviously. So I will have my kids learn to hit low flighted wedge shot with as little divot as possible. Instinctively, that makes them de-loft it the proper way, have the right trajectory. But as far as working on their distances, once Preston say he knows what his stock is, he knows what his max is, because he just knows he can hit it further than that, right? So find out what his stock is, which is a very comfortable swing. Then he goes three-quarter. He just takes it back a little bit shorter on both sides. He doesn't, Tony, Gary Woodland, John Rahm, they could take it back three-quarter, and then they could hit it full distance, right? So a clock system for Tony, well, he already takes a half swing, like a little different, right? Everybody does it different. But with Preston, he learns to control the rate. His wedge pace feels the same on all of them, and then he takes it back different distances. So he's not trying to make it go a certain way distance. He memorizes how far he takes it back, how fast he moves the club head, and then just charts how far they're flying instead of trying to make it go a certain distance. And then once he's done that for a day or two or a week or two, he has a very good baseline on what he thinks those yardages are. So once someone then has a good command of what they relatively think their wedges go within a couple of yards, and that is a healthy expectation. I think the kids, it's not too demanding that they should be able to land their wedges inside 75 yards within 3 paces. And then, 100 and in, 75 to 100, we're saying 4 paces, maybe 5. But then it's got to be random. I don't like the kids. Like on our range, I have some pin locations that are over force carries in the desert, up near a rock wall, to where it creates a look of you can't go long or you can't be short, and then make it very random. Change the club, change the distance. For Preston to go out there, Tony or a good player go out there and hit 50 shots to the same distance over and over and over, they're just calibrating that based on their swing. Oh, it went 3 yards short, I'll just hit a little harder than that. You need it very random, I believe, to get very, very good about controlling your distance. So take a 52-degree wedge, hit that stock, then go to a 56-degree and hit it 3/4, go to the 60 and hit it half, and bounce around clubs and between stock, max, 3/4, and half, and call up those numbers and see if you can fly them within that, 3 pace dispersion, or 4 to 5, depending on how far it is. So I think randomness is a really important key as far as learning how to be really good about controlling distances.
Yeah, I would agree. So if I'm hearing you correctly, you said about building a template.
Yeah, for sure.
You create these boxes, and whatever you label the box is up to you. And then that box is my 78-yard shot. That box is my 64-yard shot, so on and so forth. And then once the player has the skill and the feel via that random practice, then they're able to go out on the golf course and they can adjust it, 4 yards more or 8 yards less, or whatever they need to do based on that particular situation they're in.
Yeah, and it gets to be a baseline. I remember with me, whenever I'd work on wedges, I'd get on the course and I'd hit them 4 to 5 yards further. So I just kind of knew that from my own experience. I remember doing wedges with a tour player, and I'm like, hey, let's adjust these numbers. I think they're going to go a little further when you play. He didn't. He hit them exactly the same distance in practice, which was actually surprising to me. Most people hit them just a touch further, right? A little more adrenaline. They swing a little bit harder on the course. So I think when you get the template, you're barely tweaking that baseline a little bit from doing your practice sessions, right? You get out there, and I don't necessarily have my kids turn on normalized on the track, man. They have the flags out there. They have fresh Pro Vs. The grass is cut tight enough. They can use the TrackMan to, see the distance in real time. Like if they're into the wind on a 60-degree wedge, if they're spinning at 10,000, they know that thing is not going anywhere based on how much spin it has too. So I like my players even understanding the spin rates as far as like, you think about distance control. You can actually, I've seen what players that aren't really, I don't consider that great of wedge players, have decent distance control, but they don't control the trajectory very good. They don't control the curve very good, or the amount of spin. And so I think the first thing is, like you said, just get to where you're reasonably good about distance, and then you can become an elite player where you're hitting the same window every time. You're hitting the same spin for the most part every time, all things being equal, right? So then it gets to where it can be constantly being challenged a little bit, because I think that's what kids don't realize is, like, if a tour player only hits it to 18 feet from 100 yards and 80 yards they're hitting it to 14 feet, like, they got to be able to be pretty dang accurate on these junior golf tournaments where the pins are a little easier and the greens aren't as firm and it's not going to spin back as much. Like, they should be pretty deadly with a wedge. When you're talking about a tour player that hits it to 18 feet, well, that pin's up on a shelf. They've got a bunker behind it. They have a hazard short. They are better than some of these proximities show based on where those pins are at. So, but.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point too. Okay, that's cool to know. Boyd, what do you guys, let's say you've got these elite players and they've got a week off they've got a week. Let's say they've got 3 weeks between events. They're taking some time off.
Yeah.
During week 1 or week 2, how would you set up their practice, their golf? Let's say they've had a little bit of a rest. They've had their time off, and now they want to just do some work. How would you set that up, please?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, because even when someone comes to see me and they reach out to me, set up a lesson, one of the first things I'll say is, when's your next tournament? I want to know, even for the amateur golfers. So, because it is important, like what you share with them, the goal is to, in lessons, in my opinion, is to get immediately better. I never get people, occasionally someone says, I want to rehaul, revamp, but even in that email, I say, hey, I'm going to help you get better, but just from you leaving better in the lesson, right? So when you're looking at a guy on tour that only has 1 week off, as opposed to 2 and 3, what you're working on is very different for sure. So Wyndham had a 2-week gap about a month and a half ago. And I was like, okay, this is perfect for us to actually, for the first 3-4 days, to work on something a little more technical, right? And then gently start to fade away as he gets closer to having to go back on the road, playing much more on the course as opposed to on the range. But I would say, I think that every player should know exactly what their strengths and weaknesses are. And just because it's a strength doesn't mean it doesn't need to be practiced. It's quite the opposite. Rory sits and hits drivers all the time because that is his strength and he needs to keep it a strength. So I think, when Tony has this is the first big gap of time he's had, but he has had a couple of gaps this year of 2 weeks. And it allows for a little bit more, I don't want to say experimenting, but a little bit more in-depth stuff where you're trying a few new things. And when you have a week off, that's just not enough time. They get home, do their to-dos, rest for a day or two, and then they got to be back in game mode. But I think just always having a plan in front of them is what they're trying to do is going to be helpful. And the more time you have before that next tournament, it makes it more feasible to do. Because I think the big bulk of the technique, even with my kids, is when they have their bigger gaps of time. Even right now, some of the stuff I'm working on with Grace, it's like, okay, she doesn't have a tournament for a while, I know for sure. And I'm more willing to go into that little breakdown, get more technical, refine the technique. Because in the end, I truly believe golf is, it's skill sets and it's technique, and the better technique you have, the best players, it's not luck out there, So technique has always got to be worked on and honed in. But everyone does a little bit different. Like Tony would rather change his swing working on, like say since he hurt his ankle, he really hurt it. So for a year, he was hanging back on his right side. His footwork looks really different than when he was healthy. And so for him, he knew he was kind of staying on his right side. Well, instead of purposely trying to transfer the weight into his lead foot in the transition a little bit more, he just tried to see a little bit lower window for a week. To hit a lower window, he wasn't going to hang back on his right side and just lean the shaft even more. He was going to transfer his weight to the left side. So he would honestly try to hit shots under tree limbs. And then all of a sudden you'd film it from face on. It looks like he's transferring to his left side. The lower body looks great to him. And so he's hitting a shot to create the technical change. And then some guys are a little bit different, where, my brother would get on gears a lot. Everybody does it a little bit differently, right? So everyone learns a little bit differently.
Sure, yeah.
So.
And Boyd, give us an update on your brother, on Daniel. What's the deal? How's he doing? What's he up to?
Yeah, he played 8 years on the tour. He played on the Korn Ferry 3 years before that. And I think, right now, I think he's going to take a little bit of a break. I think he had a great career. His kids are getting older. I think he got tired of missing a lot of family stuff. And I think he's just going to lay low for a little bit. And he actually wants to be a teacher, like not a golf teacher, but like a teacher at school. So he's a great athlete. My brother is good. He loves pickleball. That's his favorite thing, is pickleball. He's got this certificate that kind of basically says he's like a low-level PGA Tour player in pickleball, right? He plays nonstop. He's good at tennis. He's great at basketball, obviously golf. But he wants to be the physical ed teacher over the school and then coach the golf team. So I think that's great,
Awesome.
And I think that's what he's going to do. So, but Yeah, it was. We worked
That's
together about
great.
5 years and had great memories together. And yeah, he's a great kid. Whatever he does, he's going to be successful because he's a hard worker.
That's cool. That's good. That's good to hear. Thanks for that. And Boyd, you recently became a Ping ambassador.
Yeah.
Talk to me. I was so pumped to see when the guys at Ping signed Tony. I was very excited about that, and then equally as pumped when you came on board. Can you tell me a little bit about that relationship and what that means to you, and maybe how you guys have worked together to get Tony's bag set up the way it is?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Ping is in my family for sure. My uncle played Ping his whole career. My brother did as well. I played at my, last few years of pro golf, played it in college, being at Oklahoma State, that's a Ping school for sure. Mike Holder, that Ping was a huge supporter of Carson Creek, where we practice every day at Oklahoma
Yeah.
State. So, Ping was, I have some cool pictures of myself, even with my wife when we're dating. I got the Ping hat on, and Preston's got his first Ping set, but it was a really natural fit. Tony, when Nike stopped making equipment, Tony's a free agent basically. So he tried
Yeah.
almost every manufacturer, and I'll never forget. I said, "Hey, you should try Ping. This is where he knows they have a reputation of great engineering, great equipment, but he had never played it in his whole career." So he goes, I didn't even go to the fitting because you just don't know what's going to happen. But he texts me and
Yeah.
goes, "Boy, this stuff's legit." And I think he was just impressed how easy it was for them to get him in a driver. Every manufacturer does it a little bit different, but they had him try 2 drivers. 2 is all. And
Yeah.
and
Wow.
on the second one, he liked it. And you look at a lot of the guys that hit the ball far. I mean, you can help me with this, but you got Bubba Watson with Ping, Cameron Champ with Ping driver, Tony, Brandon Hagee hits it a mile with Ping
Yeah.
driver. I mean, you can go on and on about, Ping drivers go far, but they are incredibly accurate. And so
Yeah.
for Tony, he played free, played Ping equipment for free for 1 full year. I mean, that says a lot. And then
Mm.
my brother was with Ping, Scott Harrington was with Ping, and then my kids, I had seen them work with Preston and Grace over the last 4 years, 5 years on their kind of junior development,
Mm.
platform. And I mean, it was just a natural fit for me. Like I don't have to do any acting. I believe in the product. I believe in them as people.
Yeah.
Like Ping is known as, I mean, Christian Pena, and before that, Chance Cosby, and you got Kent Notes and the whole team there. They take care of their guys. And I saw that whether my brother was playing great golf, the year where he took 3rd in the PGA and 8th in the US Open, and then the year, shortly after he wasn't playing as good, it didn't matter. The service and the way they treat him was the exact same. And it's been the same with Tony, where they will do anything to help their players get better. And it was cool for me, the fact that Tony played their equipment for free for a year. It clearly helped his driving and certain aspects of his game for sure. And then with the success, my kids, Preston won the U.S. Junior with 14 clubs in the bag of Ping. Grace had an incredible summer with 14 clubs in the bag of Ping. And so when Christian Pena took over, and we had a quick conversation that says, "Hey, I think this is a fit. We should be doing this." And I agreed with them. I'm proud of Ping. I'm proud to be with them, and I believe in what they do. And it's from firsthand experience, right? What they've done with some of the players I've had, and it started with Tony, just seeing how much that driver helped him. Obviously he takes pride in that he's worked very hard to change his technique. There's been several articles more coming out. I guess Golf Channel just did a show on kind of talking about how much he had changed his setup and his swing, and all credit to Tony. And then he was able to change his technique. But when he started hitting the Ping driver, I mean, he became a different driver of the golf ball for sure. It helped a ton. So, yeah, I'm proud. And Ping's right here in my backyard, 20 minutes away. So all a natural.
Exactly. It's a no-brainer.
Yeah, and it even played into Preston's college decision. He was looking at Oklahoma State and Texas and Arizona State, all for different reasons. I went to Oklahoma State, and he knows Matthew Wolf, Victor Hovland, and other guys on their team at OSU, and then he knows Cole Hammer and the Cootie brothers at Texas, and friends with them. And ASU was, Matt Thurman's done a great job here. They're a top 5 school, and Preston's only played Ping, and it was like, hey, your whole team is right here. And that was a big part of staying here too. It's just the access to Ping and always being able to stay up on the equipment and stay sharp. So that's a big deal.
What irons does Preston hit at the moment, if I may ask?
So he won the U.S. Junior in his second Utah State Am last summer with the Blueprints, and then
Yeah.
I felt like 2 or 3 months ago I thought he could use something. He's a fader of the ball, so his miss tends to be a little bit on the toe when his path is coming to the left a little bit, and the miss on the Blueprint, on the toe just comes off a little, short. But anyway,
There's
I
not much of a
suggested he
toe
went
there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There's no toe there, But I hit the Blueprints. I love them, but I played small blades when I was younger. When I was 14, I had the Mizuno MP14, so I'm used to that look, and I like them. But Preston now hits the I210s. That's what Grace hits. Cam hits, I think, the G500. I played the Blueprint. Oh yeah, there you go. And they're great. They've helped him a lot because it just gets the ball up in the air a little easier. He does hit it high anyway, but the numbers were good for him. He may go back to the Blueprints, but I think the I200s he's played really well with the last month or two with them. So
yeah. I must say those Blueprints are, when you hit them, they're so tempting.
They're pure, yeah.
And then I realized, I might have to hit more than just the 7-iron.
Yeah.
If I could get a set of 7-irons, I think I'd go for it.
But no, once it gets to that 3-iron. Even Tony went at the Open Championship. I mean, we're disappointed they had to cancel the Open Championship because Tony's played so amazing there. He plays great in the wind, very creative. But he played the Blueprint 2-iron last year. I mean, that thing is a butter. So yeah, he loves it. Yeah, but Tony, he's a great ball striker. He flushes it. So Blueprints are plenty good for Tony.
He got 1 of 5. I'm sure they only made about 5 of those things.
Yeah, exactly. The
Blueprint 2-iron.
Yeah.
Wow, that's interesting. Hey, Boyd, I must say, mate, it's been we've never met, but we've interacted quite a bit here and on Facebook and that, and I've loved it. I really appreciate you as a man, you as a dad, you as a coach. So thank you so much for sharing so openly about your family, about your players, what you stand for. I love it. It's really cool to see, as someone who watches from afar, and I've never met, and I hope we get to meet one day.
We'll meet for sure.
To see someone stand up for what you believe in. So good stuff. Keep it up. And I really appreciate, I know a lot of people on here appreciate you coming on and sharing. And it's cool to get some insight from you and learn a little bit about who you are.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it. When you reached out, I was excited to do it. I've watched you from afar as well, and seen all the great things you've done in teaching, and also with you trying to push the teaching forward. With the coach camp, getting the best coaches together, giving people a chance to learn from other coaches, and just build that teaching community. That's why I wanted to be on the show today, is because I respect that, and I've told you that privately. Message you that means a lot to me, that someone's forward thinking, trying to put the best minds together and just try to help golfers. And you can feel that from following you. You look at your golf schools or your teaching, you know what you're doing, but you have a way of delivering it in a humble way. And I've always liked that about you. And I was pumped to be on the show with you today, or be on Instagram Live with you. So keep up the great stuff you're doing, and we will meet in person soon.
I look forward to it. Boyd, thanks a lot, and stay safe, mate.
Okay, you too. Cheers.
Cheers, Dave. Thank you.